Hi, everybody. Well, nothing fun to come before us and coming at the end of the day, so that's awesome. I hope you're all still awake. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Lazy. That was a term I just saw in the previous session. It's always fun to be a seller in a room full of enablement leaders. So I am your audience. Would love to chat at some point. Anyway, lovely to be here. Thank you. I am absolutely honored to be sharing the stage with Bruce. Bruce is really leading some amazing transformation at Adobe. Really, really excited to be here. Fun fact, Adobe, as we know, is one of the most beloved brands in tech. 23 years ago, it's where I started my career. And I worked there for 9 years. I think you may have known that.
I might have known that and forgot.
So go Adobe. Let's start, Bruce, by hearing a little bit more about your role, the teams that you support, and the challenges that they're facing.
Sure, that would be awesome. First thing I will say is if you're trying to find me on LinkedIn, the last name is Ableso.
Ooh.
It happens all the time.
Marketing.
So my job, I had global readiness and enablement for Adobe Enterprise. So yes, Adobe is a huge company. It's been around in the software business forever, longer than almost anybody else. And most people know Adobe for the creative tools and the consumer-facing business that we have, which is around Photoshop and Frame and tools like that, and very B2C. That's not what I do. So I head readiness and enablement for the enterprise part of the business, which means those creative tools, but also digital marketing tools, customer experience software that are sold to large enterprises. So that is a sales team of about 6,000, additional ecosystem of about 10,000 more people who consume our training and content, even though it's not built for them. So, a pretty large group of people that we're building for.
Great. What about challenges that they've seen?
Ooh, lazy salespeople. Challenges that we've seen in terms of delivering enablement. I think I've heard a lot of very familiar themes today when we've been talking through, right? Our salespeople, it is hard to get them to focus on training unless it is hyper valuable to them. They really have to see what the value is to them and how it's helping to make them more successful. The days of being able to assign people training and just assume that they were going to take it because their manager was going to chase them and tell them to are over. Managers are not necessarily helpful with that unless their senior level manager and the VP above them are also pushing, and that's a really hard thing to pull off. So we have very much had to pivot towards, are we building content and building training that the consumers are seeing make a change in their success in their life? So that's a big challenge. I think that's an ongoing journey. Another one for sure is tying what we do to business success, which I've heard a bunch of times today, right? I came into this job, I guess about 5 years ago. And at that time, all measurement was done just on consumption. And I know you've all been there, right? It was all how many people came to the session, how many people watched the video, how many people passed the quiz. That's all that existed then. So we spent probably 2 or 3 years trying to tie what we did directly to business KPIs. And that was really hard. But with new technology, we're starting to get there. We can talk about that a little bit more as we get in. But that one continues to be a big one.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. So, one of the things that I do for MindTickle is I work with some of the most exciting customers who are really pushing the envelope in modernization of enablement strategies really led by AI. And Bruce, I know this is a hot topic for you as well. You are in the midst of very exciting transformation as it relates to AI. Can you tell us a little bit about why you decided to make that change? Really, what drove you to modernization, leveraging and harnessing the power of AI?
Sure. And one of them was the part I just started to touch on, right? How do we measure our success? And there's been a couple people today who have talked about competencies and behavior change, and that's super important. And to us, that was the glue that came in between what do we do as an enablement team and what are the business KPIs that we're influencing. Our leaders could never see the connection. There was always, you're claiming correlation but not causation. You're saying, hey, we ran a thing for pipe generation and pipe generation went up, but there were 20 other things that happened in that quarter that might have influenced that. So AI for us gives us the capability to start to analyze data and analyze behavior of the reps, and then tie what we're doing as an enablement organization to that behavior change. And that's something that is really hard, like especially with a large field force. That's a hard thing to do. So having the capability of analyzing how people are talking, behaving, what are they doing in the CRM, how are they acting with customers, what content are they sharing, how are they driving the deal cycle, where are they getting hung up, all of that kind of analysis feeding back into a capabilities profile that says the ideal rep needs to be able to do these 30 things or know these 30 things. That gives us the power to say we as enablement are moving second and third tier reps to being second and first tier reps. And then business KPIs tying to that is easy, right? That was a transformative one for us to sort of realize a year ago. One I haven't heard a lot of people talk about today, some have, is on the content production side. So to feed that engine of, hey, we have 5,000 sellers and 30 competencies, and we have to drive the needle on every single one of those things. Every part of that matrix becomes a content problem. And so one of the challenges I set for my team 2 years ago was we want to kill courseware. We don't want to be building 60-minute, 45-minute courses anymore with knowledge checks built into them. I know that's what everybody has been doing, but in the age of microlearning where everyone was talking about that, it became really obvious that our audience's attention spans were shortening, and we needed to be feeding shorter and shorter pieces of video content, like was just said, white paper content, podcasts to our audience. Multiply that across all those competencies, across all the industries that our reps work in, across all the products they have to sell. It's a content problem. How do you produce all that? And so AI has given us the power to take our incoming content and slice and dice it in all the ways to produce, instead of producing 200 assets a year, now looking at producing probably next year like 15 to 20,000 assets that are hyper-personalized, hyper-targeted for the rep, and again, to drive their success against that profile.
Hyper-personalization and adaptive learning is something that we're hearing a lot
Yes.
In the space. So I think you're spot on there. You talked about your content delivery approach changing in order to service this approach. Let's talk a little bit about the experience layer and workflows for learners. Excuse me. What was your previous experience like, and how are you planning to transform the experience for learners?
Yeah, so our previous experience was a very traditional digital university approach, right? We were expecting people to show up, sign up for courses, or we assign them courses and they come and they take it. We did a whole lot of work re-engineering that the first couple of years. I was here to build a better user experience, sort of following all the best practices for what's a great consumer experience. Adobe is a consumer experience company, so we were like, we know how to do this. Those 2 years were basically wasted because in the meantime, our audience had leapfrogged past us and they were like, we don't want to show up and sign up for stuff. We don't want to take those long courses that you're developing. We don't want to have to come and find the content in a big content store that we need. We want all of that served to us and brought to us. So we're thinking a lot more about how do you appear in the flow of work. We are moving from Salesforce to Dynamics this year. So a lot of what we're doing on Dynamics is building integrations in where we'll be able to target content, target micro-learning, target assets directly to the rep. So we can say, well, you're at stage 5 with an FSI customer and a $5 million deal, and we see from your performance, and obviously we're not telling them this, but we see from your performance history that you struggle with negotiating with CFO personas. Here's a couple 10-minute videos you should watch, and here's a deck that you should probably use in your next meeting. That kind of service is what we as consumers already expect. Like, we expect that from the digital tools and the online experiences that we have. And so we have to expect our audiences to be the same. So we're pivoting towards that. That's a work in progress. Like that's going to take a while to get there. But again, you need that hyper-personalization engine to feed that.
I can tell you as a seller, I am very looking forward to this group making all of that happen. So thank you for that. The gentleman before from Verizon, I believe, mentioned practice and game tape and the importance of ensuring that sellers are really taking ownership around practice and improving their skills and their craft. And so as we're layering in AI, I'm curious how Adobe is thinking about utilizing AI in the purpose of practice and ensuring that sellers are really adopting and taking ownership of improvement of their craft.
Yeah, it's a super important point. I mean, I think you can tell by the vendors who are here and how many times it's come up today that this is a real inflection point in enablement. And the thing we always struggled with, which I think is the same for everybody, is we were relying on frontline managers to be coaches in the past, and we were trying to teach them to be coaches. And in actuality, at least in the software industry, our FLMs tend to be terrible coaches. They have been promoted into their position because they're great sellers, they can close business, they know how to talk to customers, but none of that means you're good at accelerating the skills of the people in your team. So having AI tools that can step in and fill that void is great. FLMs appreciate it because now we're not asking them to spend 10 hours a month reviewing pitches and giving feedback to their reps. They can get a great report from whatever tool it is that they're using, and then base their reviews with reps on that. The thing I think that's really interesting is because we've taken them out of the labor loop on that, but they're still getting the information, they have gotten much better at engaging in things like deal reviews and saying, hey, I saw that you're at this point with this particular opportunity, and I had gotten a bunch of information, and they usually don't say this, but I've gotten a bunch of information from your digital coaching tool, and then they're using that in that deal review, and they're providing a better coaching experience because of that, which is nice. And these tools are evolving so fast. I mean, it's a space with a lot of tools in it. We have used a whole bunch. We will be using MindTickle, we have used Udly, we have used Second Nature, we've used other ones, and the innovation is happening so fast that I think probably the most important thing for that particular space is to have an open mind and look at what those tools can do. But I'm really excited by like multi-persona coaching. Our sellers tend to be pitching to like 3 or 4 people at a time. So a digital coaching tool should be able to have multiple personas. It should be able to look at the content that the rep is sharing in the faux call that they're having and judge them against how they're presenting that content, and are they covering the talking points. It's getting super sophisticated, which excites me a lot.
I think you bring up a really good point, and probably one that a lot of folks in this room work through, which is a multi-tool, multi-vendor environment. What are your thoughts in terms of how your vendors can best support you in this new world of AI-led enablement?
I think it's important to have a strong base, right? You've got to have some sort of revenue enablement platform that you're hanging these things onto, because if you try to assemble everything from the bits and pieces, that becomes really hard. And we came off a homegrown system that was built on internal company technology before this, and that was one of the challenges we were seeing, as we were trying to sort of pull in all these different pieces, it became hard to be best of breed with everything. So I think that's an important piece. Staying ahead of how the technology is evolving is hard these days, but doing as much of these things like this as you can, paying attention to the space, I know it takes a lot of time, but taking all the vendor calls that you can. The demos that people are showing these days are amazing. Like, it's really nice to sit in on demos where you're like, wow, that is really cool, compared to 4 or 5 years ago where there was not that much exciting to see. So doing that, I think, is important.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. One of the words that I hear a lot is interoperability too.
Yes.
Ensuring that
absolutely.
everything is seamless.
I think that's a given. It's got to be seamless. You don't want your sellers to have to go to another tool. And I said this a minute ago, like, we came from a very traditional digital university kind of setup. And of course, we will still have that, where we want people to be able to come and discover content. But more and more people want that content and that training pushed to them rather than them having to come find it. And I think another, going back to the AI point, There's so much work going on in conversational AI in putting front ends onto using whatever LLM is your choice, putting front ends onto your content. I honestly think we're going to start seeing conversational fatigue in the next couple of years, and people are going to be like, I don't want to go talk to yet another AI to try to find the answers to my question. I want to be working with an agent who's a digital coach who knows what I need and is going to go find it and then serve it up to me and bring it to me. And that's not saying people or sales reps are lazy, but I think that's just the world that we're in. As AI becomes more agentic overall, and you have these helper agents in your personal life and in your business life, we as enablement people are going to be spending more time training agents and less time training people.
Sing it to the rafters, Bruce.
Yeah.
You had mentioned early on in this conversation about measurement and how you're, really shifting the way that you're thinking about measurement from the traditional enablement metrics of, and I've heard others say it too, completions and assessment scores and, all of those things, into more sophisticated way of measuring true outcomes. Can you talk a little bit more in depth about that in terms of, what are the key steps that you're looking at? I know others mentioned behavior change. I know that's also top of mind for you. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah. So key and kind of at the center of that is something, and I want to say it was Doug, 2 presentations ago, showing the capability matrix across reps and across coaches. That part is key to making this succeed. Like, you have to understand the skills and the capabilities of your salespeople. So you have to be able to, first of all, build that capability profile, have buy-in from your leadership that these are the right things we're trying to train for, and then have the tools to measure all of the behavior that feeds that, right? And that's a lot of things, like I said before, call intelligence, CRM data, training consumption, content usage, all of those things in a very automated way have to feed that and be giving us a picture of how are we influencing the behavior of the rep. That was when we were looking at new revenue enablement platforms, that was one of the things that really excited me, because being able to see that tied to business KPIs, basically in a dashboard, I was like, I can take that to my CRO, and he will finally understand what my enablement team is doing. We're not trying to directly influence deal progression or pipe generation. We are trying to influence the knowledge and behaviors that lead to deal progression and pipe generation. And sales leaders can't make the connection across that gap, but when you start filling that with something like a readiness index and those capability profiles that shows that transition and shows reps who are in the middle of performance moving into higher performance and the business they drive, that becomes a super powerful story. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know a single CRO that would take that enablement closes deals and accelerates deals without seeing the steps that they're influencing in the process. So thank you for that. I know we have about 12 minutes left, and we want to leave enough time for questions. So to close, Bruce, what's one piece of advice you would share with the folks in the crowd? Something simple that they can take away from this session and implement right away when they get back in their office.
Think about the individuals, and this is something that's at the heart of what Adobe does. It's one of the reasons I love the company, is at the end of the day, it's about the person on the other side of the screen, and are you helping them be better at what they do? Are they getting the experience out of you that they want? And enablement has to be the same thing. And even going back 5 or 10 years, we were telling our enablement teams the same thing, but you didn't have the tools to do that. We finally now have the tools. Again, the beauty of AI, not just in targeting and personalization, but in the production of targeted and personalized content, gives us that power to really make an experience that feels special to the person on the other side of it. So drive for that. Like, that's always your target.
Thank you, Bruce. Amazing insight. All right, I'll open it up to questions for the last 10 minutes. And I'll bring the mic to you if you have questions. I don't know, are we using the Slido for this session?
Or you can shout.
Yeah.
I'm not averse to that. Oh, good one. How do you mitigate content overload? I am in the middle of a really sharp discussion about this right now with my leadership, like literally this week, because We had a confluence of things happen. We just came out of sales kickoff like probably everybody else in this room, and we did a whole bunch of training around SKO. Adobe has a customer-facing summit that just happens to come up in March and April every year. We have to do a bunch of enablement around that. We are transitioning to Dynamics. Like I said, we're launching a training and you can imagine a full training program for that in March and April. And so my sales leaders started to call me last week, and they were like, "Holy crap, what are you doing? Why are you sending all of this out? Why is all?" And you can only say so much. We're at a point in the business, like it'll get better in a couple months once we get past this. But the real answer to that, which I keep giving back to them, is just hold on, because we're getting to that future where we're going to kill the 2,000 person webinar, and we're going to kill the everybody in the field gets an invite to one thing that talks about a product release. And we're going to turn that into, well, the person in this role needs 10 minutes of information about that product release, and the technical pre-sales person needs a hands-on demo training and to be able to practice it, and they're just going to get this piece, and the FLM is just going to get this piece. So the future for that is, how do you get from that broad spread enablement to targeted, personalized enablement? And in Adobe, people understand that because it's what we sell. So that's a pretty easy story for me to tell my sales leaders. Like, this is what's coming. This is how we'll get there. The other thing you really have to work against is all the other teams in your company that call themselves enablement and send enablement, like marketing and legal. And so for us, it was about introducing some governance around that and saying enablement is the one channel, or the one channel to the field. And people hated that. They hated that. I still fight about that every week with somebody or another. But it's really important to try to get some control around what's being pushed to the field, even what gets put on their calendars. Because I will get sales reps call me and they're like, "I got 20 calendar invites this week." And when we really look at it, 4 of them are from the enablement team, and the rest are for a million other things. So that's when you really have to work on. Interactivity. That is a great question. So like I just said, my product enablement leader and I were just talking about this morning. Not talking. We were having a text conversation about this morning. Because when I said I want to kill the webinar, product enablement tends to be one of those things where it's like, we have a new release, 6,000 people need to know about it, everyone's going to show up for 45 minutes and watch this thing live, do VILT live. And it's a poor experience. It takes the whole field away from their job for X amount of time. So we want to get rid of that, chop it up, personalize it, turn it into on-demand content that is served to people when and where they want it. But what you lose then is the interactivity, because the value people get out of that webinar is, well, I'm asking questions to the product marketing leader who's on it. I'm talking back and forth with the other sales reps and sharing information. And when we really started looking at it, we found there wasn't that much information sharing going on. So it was very much kind of a one-way. They wanted to ask the product leader questions. And we think we can solve that with a combination of, we make this content available for a week. We staff an always-on chat room with humans part of the time and chatbots part of the time. And so we make sure people get their questions answered. We're going to try it. I'm not saying it's going to work, but that to me is like the next step in how do we interact. Managing your AI solutions in a changing governance landscape. It's really hard. And the harder part for me is we have a lot of innovative people on our team and on the teams that are adjacent to us, and as tools like Anthropic and Claude have gotten democratized and easier and easier to use and inside the corporate firewall, which is fine. I'm not objecting to that, but we find everybody building something. And so governance has to come down to, how do you think about field experience? Because it's not just about AI solutions, it's about all the things that are being pushed to the field. So one of the things the team that I'm part of, not the enablement team, but sort of the larger sales operations and enablement team did in the last year, was bring in a person in a team who are heading sales experience. And that was something we hadn't had before, but somebody who is watching that entire tools landscape, the entire content and communications landscape and saying, yes, we can roll out these 6 things, but this one actually overlaps with something else, and so we're going to hold back on that. I'm not a huge fan of like I hate governance like the next person, but that piece is really vital, I think, to have somebody thinking about what is the rep experience of all these things rolling out and have the power to say no, that we're not going to bring a certain tool out. Using a tool for the video format. I'm going to take that as how we're creating video. We use a lot of different tools. We have our own internal creative tools when we're doing it with humans. We use Synthesia a lot. I know we've heard Synthesia today. In that content production workflow, that's a core piece. What we're trying to do, especially with things like product marketing content, is, hey, you guys don't have to change what you send us. You send us decks, and you send us white papers, and you send us video recordings of you giving a pitch, just like you always have. But we want to feed that into a production model that can then take that and say, okay, well, how do I turn that into pitch practice? How do I turn that into, again, micro-learning assets? And then how do I produce video off of those decks that is 5 minutes, 10 minutes, easy to consume. So we use things like Copilot for scripting. We use podcasting tools. We use Synthesia, like I said, for video. And all of it is kind of hand-assembled. You know, there's not one tool yet that we've found that does all of it for us.
Bruce,
yeah.
There's a question in the audience.
Oh, yes.
Hi, Bruce. This is Beatrice with AWS.
Hi.
You were talking about the future of enablement of the hyper-personalization.
Yes.
Do you have any best practices of how to get closer to that end goal?
How to get closer to it. So the Adobe version of that, which I happen to agree with because, again, this is something we sell, is hyper-personalization starts as a content supply chain problem. It starts as hyper-personalization you can't solve for until you solve the problem of how are you producing all of those assets that you're going to personalize. And so that's part of what I've been talking about. Best practice in terms of how you roll it out. We're in the middle of this. So to me, it mostly comes back to user experience again, because you don't want the user to feel like they're being snowed under with a blizzard of content, right? We get bombarded all day long with digital content, and your seller doesn't want to have that same experience in what they're doing. So I think it's gonna be having to be really careful about how you throttle the amount of content that you're sending to somebody, and are you getting it to them at the right time, in the right place, again, based on the behavior data that you're collecting. But it's going to be a really fine line to walk, because it might be, hey, here's, like I said, here's a video and here's a deck that we think you need right now. Maybe awesome, but here's 3 videos and 2 decks and the CRO giving a pitch, all coming at the same time. We're back in the same place we started, of now you're giving me too much and I'm overwhelmed. So we'll see.
Thank you.
Oh, we have 2 more minutes.
One more question.
Okay.
Slide up. I think there's one more question.
I
Yeah.
thought you were walking to something.
No,
Okay.
no.
The relationship between enablement and marketing. Like, who decides what the prospect experience is? Adobe is, first of all, a software company, we would like to say, but it's really mostly a marketing company, honestly. Like, marketing drives so much of what the company does. I think most of the senior leadership in the company are either product people or marketing people at their hearts. So they tend to think about, how does something look on the stage at Adobe Summit? How does the customer hear about, like, Adobe's agentic AI story before that turns into enablement? The relationship, I would say, is a lot better than it used to be. And it's a lot better than it used to be because we did some of the things that I heard other people talk about today in terms of, like, setting expectations with product marketing in terms of how they can help you, but also how you can help them, and making sure you're clear with them on what are our expectations of you as a marketing org, but also what will we do with what you give us. You can't come to us for every single product release and expect us to send content out to every single person in the field every time something changes. And so that was a long transformation for us. But the beginning of it was really working with marketing, especially with product marketing, and saying, we're going to establish a bill of materials for every time you want us to roll something into the field. This is what you need to produce before we'll consider it. And of course, nobody was happy with that. But now that we're a couple of years later working in that model, it's working really well. Everybody knows what to expect. They know what they have to fulfill. We know what's expected of us. So that's great. All of that being said, that's sort of here in the marketing layer. There's a much higher marketing layer that's like, this is the vision of the company. And we still, I'm sure like everybody else in this room, I will get messages from our CMO, hey, we're changing the AI story, and we need to get it in the field next week. This was like 2 weeks ago. We need to get in the field next week before XYZ happens. Or somebody heard a rep give a pitch, and they were like, that does not line up with the story that's on Adobe.com. And so now we need to retrain 5,000 people because of that. So yeah, I know. I hope that's not being recorded. Rachel, if you're out there, I love you. That's our CMO. So it's a lot better. It's a lot better, but it's always a work in progress, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Sorry.
Bruce. There
Thank
was
you.
one other question about content being released before Adobe Summit. Connect with Bruce on LinkedIn and ask him directly.
Yeah. Or hit me up in the room and ask me.
Yeah.
Bruce,
Thanks,
Jen,
everybody.
thank you both so much. That was awesome.